Okay, let's unpack this. That visual of Deion Sanders on NFL Draft Day, the camera's locked on him. You could feel the air thick with anticipation as the picks rolled by.
Yeah, definitely.
And then finally, Shedeur's name called fifth round.
Mm-hmm. A long wait.
It was such a stark contrast to the early buzz. I mean, some had him pegged as a potential top guy, maybe even first round way back.
Right, the hype was there.
So you have to wonder what really went down. Why the slide?
That's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got a couple of key perspectives to, dissect.
Okay.
First, there's this Clout Watcher YouTube video transcript.
Hey.
It explores some pretty strong allegations, sabotage, other things.
Sabotage. Wow.
And then we'll be looking at Deion Sanders' take on it all from his ESPN First Take interview.
Got it. So, two main sources. Our goal here isn't really to say who's right or wrong, is it?
No, not at all. It's more about getting under the surface of these different accounts, seeing what emerges.
We want to give you, the listener, a much clearer understanding of the various forces at play here.
Yeah.
Sort of move beyond just the initial draft day headlines.
Exactly. Let's maybe start with the most dramatic theory out there. The suggestion that Shadeur Sanders' lower draft position wasn't just about team evils.
But was deliberate.
Yeah, deliberate.
Right. The Clout Watcher transcript suggests Deion Sanders believes there was, a concerted effort by NFL owners.
And he reportedly didn't mince words.
No kidding. Suggesting it was like a KK Klux Klan type of clandestine meeting where this alleged decision was made. I mean, that's an explosive claim.
It really is. And the reasons given for this, according to that Clout Watcher video, they're pretty significant too.
Which were?
Well, the claim is that some owners felt Deion Sanders was becoming too influential, sort of acting like he runs the whole league,
Okay.
and that they specifically wanted to embarrass, humiliate, and sabotage both him and Shedeur. It really paints a picture of a power struggle. It definitely suggests some owners felt maybe their authority was being challenged. Deion's strong personality, his success.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a league with such powerful figures, how often might these kinds of dynamics play out behind the scenes?
That's a crucial question. I mean, we don't have hard evidence of owners historically doing this kind of deliberate sabotage for non-football reasons, right?
No, not documented like that.
Yeah.
But the perception of power and influence, that certainly shapes narratives.
Sure.
And the Clout Watcher commentary also brought up the point about racial dynamics, suggesting that confidence in black athletes might be seen differently than in white players.
Which connects to Dr. Umar's perspective, also mentioned in the transcript, viewing this whole thing as a power move.
Exactly. A way to remind the Sanders family who's really in charge.
So it suggests this wasn't just about football grades, but maybe about establishing dominance within the league structure.
Precisely. It frames the draft outcome as potentially serving a bigger message about the NFL hierarchy. But, of course, not everyone buys into this sabotage theory.
Right, and we need to look at that too. The counter-arguments, the reasons Shedeur might have fallen that, don't involve some shadowy conspiracy.
Absolutely. You had Hall of Famer Chris Carter reportedly just dismissing any idea of collusion flat out.
Okay, so push back there.
And the Clout Watcher report itself actually presents alternative explanations. It mentions NFL execs and owners allegedly finding Shedeur cocky or too sure of himself during his interactions.
Those pre-draft interviews, yeah, they're critical, aren't they? Teams want to know about personality fit, locker room dynamics.
Hugely important.
Yeah.
And then there's the fact that Shedeur didn't participate in the NFL Combine.
That seems like a pretty big decision looking back, considering how much teams rely on those evaluations.
It really is. The Combine is central. Medicals, athletic tests, speed, agility, all that, and maybe most importantly, those interviews with multiple teams all in one place.
Provides a baseline for comparison.
Right. And skipping it. It raises questions, limits the direct info teams have. Plus, the Clout Watcher transcript mentioned a reported negative interaction with the New York Giants. Something about an install package.
An install package. Okay, maybe break that down for listeners who aren't familiar. What is that, and why would a negative interaction matter?
Sure. Think of it like a mini playbook, a condensed version of a team's offense or defense, key plays, terminology.
Okay.
Teams give these to prospects to gauge how quickly they learn, how well they grasp concepts. So a negative interaction could suggest maybe lack of prep, difficulty understanding, or even just a communication clash. All things teams note down.
That makes sense. So beyond the combine and interviews, there's also this narrative that Deion and his camp might have well, misplayed their hand.
Yeah, maybe acted like they could dictate where Shedeur would land.
Like trying to control the process.
The transcript mentioned Shedeur very much proceeded as if he was dictating to clubs where he was going to go. It even draws that comparison to pulling an Eli.
Ah, the Eli Manning situation.
Yeah.
Wanting to play for a specific team.
Exactly. And that kind of perceived approach, trying to control your destination before you're drafted, it could definitely be off-putting to the teams holding the picks.
It raises that interesting point about power dynamics again, doesn't it? Players have preferences, sure, but ultimately the teams make the call, acting like you have too much influence beforehand. Yeah, that could rub some people the wrong way.
Definitely. And then you have analysts like Todd McShay.
Right, what did he say?
He reportedly called Shedeur's attitude a red flag and suggested his job interviews just didn't go well. That's pretty blunt feedback.
Yeah, especially from someone whose job is basically assessing these players objectively.
It is direct, and it underlines how much teams weigh character and presentation. Also, the Clout Watcher report touched on another angle, teams possibly being wary of a package deal.
Meaning?
The idea that drafting Shedeur might also come with, dealing with Deion's significant presence, maybe even his own potential aspirations within the league down the line.
That's a fascinating angle. Teams aren't just drafting a player in a vacuum, are they? They're looking at the whole ecosystem. Family, advisors, it's always a factor.
Always. And finally, we really can't overlook the basic football evaluation, can we?
True.
The Clout Watcher video itself mentioned pre-existing concerns among scouts. Things like Shedeur size, his arm strength, his mobility, judged against the NFL standard.
These are core QB traits teams scrutinize constantly.
Ridiculously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's entirely possible that even setting aside everything else, his draft stock simply landed where teams ultimately graded him based purely on those skills.
So we've got this whole spectrum, a possible conspiracy, maybe some missteps in their approach, or just standard draft evaluations. Now let's pivot to Deion Sanders himself. How did he defend his son through all this?
Well, in that ESPN First Take interview, his protectiveness is crystal clear. He basically framed any criticism of his sons as personal. He said something like, "You think I'm going to let them talk about y'all and they ain't going to be personal."
Right. That shows his deep emotional investment.
Absolutely. He also argued that a lot of the criticism comes because of their last name. That the name itself draws the criticism, sparks strong reactions.
And he sees that attention, good or bad, as them provoking change.
Yeah, which he seems to view as a positive thing, ultimately. He expressed huge pride in Shedeur's character, his intelligence, and how he played, especially given the challenges at Colorado. That offensive line situation, for instance.
Playing behind a line that struggled.
He highlighted Shedeur's high completion percentage, his knack for extending plays with his feet, though he was careful, not to compare him directly to Lamar Jackson.
Right, managing expectations there.
But he stressed that Shedeur has always faced scrutiny and consistently made the best of tough situations.
It's also interesting how Deion addressed his own very visible role in his son's careers.
Yeah, he framed it as being a supportive black father. He kind of contrasted it with historical narratives about absent black fathers.
Questioning why his involvement is sometimes viewed negatively. He drew parallels to figures like LeVar Ball, LeBron James.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a powerful point he's making about potential double standards, how different levels of parental involvement might get perceived based on background.
Definitely something to think about. Now, amidst all the draft drama, there was also that really weird incident, the prank call.
Oh, yeah. That was wild. As detailed in the Clout Watcher transcript, Shedeur got a fake phone call. Someone pretending to be Mickey Loomis, the Saints GM.
Orchestrated by some prankster, Jax Ulrich.
Yeah. Can you just imagine the emotional roller coaster of that moment? Thinking you're getting the call.
It's a life-changing call.
And then realizing it's a joke. Especially the timing, right in the middle of that high-stress draft period. It just adds another layer of frustration to the whole thing for Shedeur.
It really does. It just highlights the insane pressure around the draft, how even something meant to be maybe lighthearted can really land wrong.
Absolutely. Significant emotional impact.
Okay, so lastly, let's touch on Deion's own coaching future and how he sees things now that his sons are heading to the NFL.
He was very clear in that First Take interview. Said his sole focus now is being the best head coach he can be at Colorado.
He seemed to suggest coaching without his sons there gives him a renewed focus.
Yeah, he emphasized that. A sense of freedom, maybe, in his role now. He even mentioned having considered the Dallas Cowboys job in the past.
Oh, interesting.
But he reiterated his commitment now is to the college game, mentoring those young men. Seems like his immediate future is firmly set there.
And what about his views on player motivation, NIL and all that?
His perspective there is pretty clear, too. He really values passion for the game. Players chasing a pro career based on merit rather than being primarily driven by NIL money.
Wants that love of football, the ambition to reach the highest level to be the main drivers.
Exactly. Cultivating that kind of culture.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're kind of left circling back to that big question, aren't we? Why the fifth-round slide for Shadeur Sanders?
Yeah, what was it really?
Was it that hidden agenda by NFL owners Deion believes in? Was it maybe a consequence of decisions made by Shedeur and his father leading up to the draft? Or was it just simply how NFL teams evaluated his talent and potential at the end of the day?
And as we've seen looking at these sources, it's complicated,
No.
multifaceted.
Definitely not a simple answer.
You've got Deion's firm conviction about a deliberate effort to undermine them. Then you have accounts suggesting Shedeur's demeanor, their camp's approach, might have put some teams off.
And then the football side.
And crucially, yeah, the legitimate questions about how his skill size, arm, mobility translated to the pro level in the eyes of scouts.
It really just underscores how much more goes into the NFL draft than just on-field performance, doesn't it? So many layers.
Yeah.
Evaluation, perception, power dynamics.
It really is a complex mix.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads to a final thought, maybe, for you listening. Given all these pressures, the strong personalities involved, the huge financial stakes in the NFL draft, what kind of unspoken factors, the things that don't get reported, do you think truly shape a player's journey and where they ultimately land in pro sports?
That's a good question to ponder. What happens behind those closed doors?
Exactly. It's a complex landscape out there.